Morning has broken like the first morning. God's recreation of the first day. Whenever I hear that, I kind of think of God playing tennis. Is that terrible? God's recreation of the new day, sort of there, doing something outside, outdoors. Realize we're going, Matt's already on it. Recreation or recreation. Wonderful. When was the first morning, friends? The very first morning. Some of us say it was 4.5 billion years ago when the earth formed. That's just one way of thinking. When I think about when that first morning was, when that first breath was on the face of the deep or on the abyss, there's a quote that always comes back to me. That quote is, "Bertram Cates is dead." See, I was in a production of Inherit the Wind as a child. For those of you who don't know, Inherit the Wind is a play about the Scopes trial in Tennessee when someone was put on trial for teaching evolution in public school. And Bertram Cates is the fictionalized name for that teacher. And I played a character in that play. And the whole idea of the trial was that Clarence Darrow, a great trial lawyer, and William Jennings Bryan, an avowed racist and white supremacist of his time, who also managed to be nominated for vice president at one point in our history, went head to head. William Jennings Bryan taking the part of the school district, and Clarence Darrow coming down from the Northeast to defend the teacher for teaching evolution. And so one of the scenes in that play, Clarence Darrow gets William Jennings Bryan on the stand. And he's questioning William Jennings Bryan about the Bible, the thing that he knows so well, that he relies on for so many of these things. And Darrow, being the crafty trial lawyer that he is, asks William Jennings Bryan, well, when was the sun made by God in your interpretation of the world in Genesis? And William Jennings Bryan quickly says, on the fourth day. I know my Bible, fourth day. And Clarence Darrow says, if the sun was not created till the fourth day, how do you know how long those first 3 days were? That stuck in my head as a kid. Sort of like, how does that really work? Like, what if that first or second day was 4.5 billion years long, and then later, so it sort of, I started to get these questions. It's really how I ended up Unitarian minister. So thank you for high school drama, nothing quite like it. But the story then goes on that in the play that William Jennings Bryan is so perplexed by this question and so heated and so challenged. I'm sorry to give away the play, but if you haven't seen it by now, it's kind of on you. He dies. He goes out of the courtroom and dies of almost a lack of faith or a challenge to his faith. And so in our production, the judge comes in, my friend Jason, God bless Jason, and says the line which is supposed to be, William Jennings Bryan is dead, but instead he says, Bertram Cates is dead. Bertram Cates is sitting in the courtroom. He's sitting right there. And so Jason has to be like, oh, I'm so sorry, Bertram. I meant to, he kind of made it up. But the point of the story is that everyone knew what the line was. Even the people sitting in the audience who had never seen it knew that he meant William Jennings Bryan, who went off stage like this, probably died off stage. And so we all just kind of let it go. But it's a powerful thing to have our faith questioned. For some people, it's fatal, at least in high school productions of plays. But prayer, as we've been talking about all month, as this faith here, as this understanding that we think about, is not everybody's favorite subject. I know that. I know when we chose this as a monthly theme, some people were maybe just not going to come to church or were going to send me emails. So my crafty brain thought, I'll invite the emails. I'll ask you to tell me about prayer. And so I got some really fun responses. I hope it's okay to share this, but Lee Curran sent me a note saying that when I saw that prayer was the theme, I had a very big eye roll, which I love. But then she shared this with us, that my co-liberation, these are her words, my co-liberation work is my form of prayer. Rather than reaching out to a divine God, I reach out to our divine communities as we work to amplify the divine qualities of those who are oppressed. I think the founder that Mary McKay offered in the Brian Doyle poem would be a big fan of that form of prayer. It's a very insightful way of thinking about it, and it starts to raise the question of, what really is the big deal? If we're praying to a God or a sense or a creator or something that's all-knowing, all-powerful, or the universe, maybe maybe a universe doesn't really care if a person is speaking. So if we have this all-powerful, all-knowing, why does that being need to hear our prayers? It knows what's in our heart, right? Doesn't this God, this all-powerful being, know what we mean, know what's in our heart? I get that question from friends, and I answer it this way. It's a little manipulative, so I just want to give you a manipulative trigger warning. I ask them, do you know the song Happy Birthday? And they say, well, of course. Oh, and I'll TJ, Reverend TJ, I know where you're going. Yes, I do prefer to hear someone sing Happy Birthday to me, as we did with Bob Fraser. It's more fun to hear it than to just, could you imagine being in a birthday party and everyone brings the cake out with all the candles and they say, now everyone silently remember Happy Birthday in their hearts. That's a Buddhist birthday party. That's a wonderful, no, I'm just kidding. No, we sing it out loud. We have fun with it, right? Dennis picks a higher and higher key every time we sing it just to see what my range is at 10 a.m. in the morning. No. And then I said, no, it's not that. I said to my friend who had at the time a 5-year-old daughter, imagine having your daughter sing you happy birthday and hearing your daughter learn those words for you and honor your life. That is what I imagine people who believe in a power that wants to hear its children, its creations pray. That is the feeling. Hearing one's child that they formed and helped to grow and taught that song, sing it back to them. That's the beauty. It's poetry so beautiful, it's almost just worth doing, regardless of my, theological understandings or things like that. I realize, I'm sort of make arguments for a living, so bear with me as we go through this. So it's that question that's still there of, do we really even need a deity or something for prayer to be helpful? We heard a prayer that's on the moon that Carol offered us, that went to the moon. I haven't been to the moon, but a prayer that's been to the moon is probably worth, reading every once in a while. But does it even matter if there's a source? I'm reading a book right now called Breath by James Nestor. I'm not recommending the book to you. It's a kind of wacky quasi-science about breath and biology, but it has a very interesting chapter about breath. And there is a finding, they did a study of people praying the rosary in Catholic churches. They found that the rhythm of the rosary is almost exactly 5.5 seconds of breath in and 5.5 seconds of breath out. And then over and over, they started finding prayers and other faiths that are about 5.5 seconds in and 5.5 seconds out. Over and over, this magic number of 11-second sequences. They found that simply breathing in that way without praying anything or doing anything at all lowers your blood pressure, can lower your body temperature, actually, has a lot of actual physical effects, and it eventually has the power to move oneself a bit out of the bind between conscious and unconscious that is in a lot of our minds, the observed and the observer that many psychologists and philosophers believe happens. And it's very true throughout faiths throughout the world, this way of prayer. And one of the other submissions we got about prayer actually touches on this. It's a beautiful observation by Laurel Zeri about talking to our better self. I like that way of thinking about prayer. She shares that the habit of silent prayer persists for her. She says, I have the distinct feeling that I am talking to my better self when I pray, but I'm hedging my bets in case there is more to it. I love Laurel. At times of extreme anxiety, death watches, and pre-surgery, I practice metta, using the formula, may all beings be safe and protected, healthy and strong, peaceful and content, happy and free, repeated until I lose track. When I can't go to sleep, I pray. Please help me to get a good night's sleep so that I can have a good tomorrow. Help me to be a good person. Help me to do the right thing and to be kind. Help me to contribute to the happiness of others. What a beautiful prayer. And there are so many and there are also many God blesses as people or situations come to mind. And she says occasionally even Jesus, especially while driving. Sorry, I even knew that was coming and it still made me laugh, Laurel. When I calm down, I like to think that it was shorthand for thank you, Jesus, when driving. Praying to our better self, but hedging our bets. I love it. This is some of the fun that we have with prayer. It's some of the other ways we think about it for me when we're talking about the first day is about the sun coming in, the sun being something in our lives. There are many faiths where the sun, and even you could argue if you have faith in actual, the progress of life in the solar system, the sun is pretty central to most metabolism, most formation of gravity, of keeping our planet from spinning out into the depths of space. And so the centrality of the sun in so many lives and so many faiths is powerful. And Catherine Graham offers this beautiful poem about a harvest, which requires sun. And we are approaching this time of harvest in all of the Northern Hemisphere. And so this is the Thanksgiving prayer by Max Kutz that Catherine offers. Let us give thanks for a bounty of people, for generous friends with smiles as bright as their blossoms, for feisty friends as tart as apples, for continuous friends who, like scallions and cucumbers, keep reminding us that we've had them, for crotchety friends as sour as rhubarb and as indestructible, for handsome friends who are as gorgeous as eggplants and as elegant as a row of corn, and the others as plain as potatoes and as good for you, for friends as unpretentious as cabbages, as subtle as summer squash, as persistent as parsley, as endless as zucchini, and who, like parsnips, can be counted on to see you through the winter, for old friends nodding like sunflowers in the evening time, for young friends who wind around like tendrils and hold us. We give thanks for friends now gone, like gardens past that have been harvested, but who fed us in their times that we might live. That's beautiful, Catherine. Thank you. This idea of these different ways of seeing, these ways of understanding, are like lights passing through stained glass that cast this one sun, this one vision, this one light that we all share onto dimmed floors and darkened walls and into hallways, into doorways that had been darkened before. We cast these beautiful colors shaped through the ways we see the world, through stained glass, through other ways, through uninterrupted and sometimes by any glass at all. We cast these colors into our worship spaces as Unitarian Universalists or as just people having human experiences with the divine or without the divine into our lives. And another poem, it's a very long poem that Catherine Graham also offered, is by Robin Wall Kimmerer, a writer who wrote Braiding Sweetgrass. She's a citizen Potawatomi Nation member, which I believe is in what some people call today Western New York. But Robin Wall Kimmerer can write, friends. And one of the endings of one of her great litanies of poetry ends like this. We have not arrived at the place where we end our words. Of all the things we have named, it is not our intention to leave anything out. If something was forgotten, we leave it to each individual to send such greetings and thanks in their own way. Now our minds are one. I would never be so foolish as to think and And just that this service will prove this case, that those who gather in a Unitarian Universalist community would be of one mind only about really much of anything. But this morning dawns another day, friends. A day cast from the mold of the first day, the first breath, the first awakening of a mind, or a mind to a soul, or a life to the Creator. A day whose light is cast in bright relief against the dullness of walls and the floors, but built once long ago and no longer suitable, no longer enough for us. A day that casts each one of us in the drama of our own lives, of all of life. Our roles are so tiny. And yet our voices, whether aloud or inside, call again and again to ourselves, to one another, to all that was and all that ever will be. They call out to us and say, Bertram Cates is dead, right? Or they say, in the voice of the most tender heart we know, one we may never yet have met, how grateful we each are for this new day. This day that recreates the first rising of the sun, the first breath of our lives, the first love we have ever truly known. For in the end, perhaps every prayer, any prayer, is only the child within us, waking us to say over and over again, happy birthday. And may it ever be so. Blessed be, and amen.